firstly, thank you for having us. It's always great to interact with parents and people who work with children or spend time with children because that's something that we're really passionate about. Uh, Ambi, why don't you go first?
Sure. So essentially, we're musicians, we're music educators. We love performing and teaching, and so actually for us, it's been great for the last I don't even know how many years now. We've really loved teaching. We started SaPa in 2007, and our kind of passion is to make sure that the next generation of young musicians get opportunities to interact and learn to love music.
Yeah, so what Ambi left out is that he's a very reluctant PhD. And we're both performers because I think that for us, the biggest joy of music has come from the fact that we've been learning music practically since we've been born, since we were born. And as performers and music creators, we see the value of music education for everybody. So that's also been kind of what we pursued academically. We started off in different directions. Somebody has an MBA. I have a master's degree in law, and then we continued on, and we both have PhDs in music because our focus has really been about how do we make music a meaningful part of everybody's life. So in 2007, when SaPa was started, the idea was kind of to create a home for global music in India. And we wanted to really support creating the next generation of musicians. So what we worked on from the beginning was how do we make something like classical music, which is considered in some circles to be very complex, and how do we make it something that young children can be passionate about? How can we make classical music something that every child can love? So that's how we started the SaPa baby program, where we work, at that time it was working with children as young as 3 to teach them classical music. Now we work with 1 and 1.5 year olds, and we really think that it's important for every child to be able to experience the joy of music and then make music a meaningful part of their lives, while at the same time catering to that more serious set of people who want to be musicians. And in 2014, we realized that there was a much bigger need for music uh, in a more sustained and systematic way as part of our education system, and that's how SaPa in Schools was started.
Yeah, so in 2014 we started SaPa in schools, and the idea is to make sure that all children have access to music education. And when we talk about access, it's obviously not only about the financial aspect, but also to make sure that music is being presented in a way that young children can appreciate and love music. And our entire idea is to make sure that music is a part of everyone's life. So that's when we started SaPa in schools, and the idea was to teach Indian music, but also global music. So music from around the world is kind of also our focus, to make sure that kids can kind of see different styles of music, see what they appreciate, and eventually they can kind of say, okay, fine, I love Indian music, but I also, love flamenco music, or I also love music from Australia or music from Africa.
And through the SaPa in Schools program, we've not only looked at kind of uh, music as music appreciation, but also how children can engage with music through singing and using instruments. We have fun workshops where musicians from different parts of the world have come in and interacted with people. And we've also focused a lot on learning music in different languages because there's so much research that supports, especially for young children, learning to sing in different languages. So by the time they hit grade 1, children have already sung in 10 different languages, and that really helps so much with brain development and many other things. I think music is really important for mental health. And one thing that I want to say before I start off is that neither of us are mental health professionals. So if there is a situation which needs medical care, then that it's very important that that happens. But in general, there's a lot of research that shows how music helps with anxiety, it helps with stress, it helps children focus. And I think during the pandemic, we've really seen a lot of situations where people feel isolated, and people are having difficulty connecting. People are feeling like they're not in control of things. So we've seen that music has been really critical for the mental health, especially of children. And if we can create situations where they engage with music positively, it helps children as young as 3 or 4 kind of with social emotional learning, and helps them get in touch with what they're feeling, and sort of moving towards being able to articulate that. Because unless you can articulate your feelings, you won't be able to kind of be in control of them. So there are a couple of ways to think about how music influences actions. One, as we were just discussing, is that you use music to mirror your mood, right? So if you're feeling sad, listening to a sad song is something that kind of gets you into that space, and somehow it heals you, even though it feels counterintuitive that when you're sad, if you're listening to something sad, you think it's going to make you more sad. It doesn't always do that. So I think when you listen to music, it's important to follow your heart, and kind of play the music that will comfort you at that time.
And I think that's different for everybody. So the music that I like need not be the music that you like, and that's okay. And I think so. It's important to find the music that resonates with you, and it can definitely kind of elevate your mood or take you somewhere else.
And there's also this scientific principle called the ISO principle, which speaks about kind of using music to mirror and then change your emotions. So there is research that shows if you're trying to change your mood or somebody else's mood from, say, sad to happy, then the way to do that is to sort of start with a few sad songs and then gradually change the feeling of the music that you're listening to, and your mood will mirror that and change with it. So I think music music and mood are very closely related in many senses, and that's something that we know intuitively, but it's also good to know that there's research to support that. I think now people and parents and stakeholders in education are sort of looking at the importance of social emotional learning as this whole idea of holistic development. And we use different terms, right? We talk about emotional quotient, or we talk about emotional intelligence, but at the end of the day, it's the ability of a child or even an adult to be able to center themselves and understand what they're feeling and be able to process emotion in a positive way. And I think music is a really great way to introduce the idea of social emotional learning to children very young. And whether it's as simple as saying, listen to this piece of music and draw what you feel, or does this music make you feel happy or sad, or what does this make you think about, these kind of activities help children at a very young age get in touch with the idea of different feelings and also what they are feeling. So if we're able to create a situation or a safe space for children to explore their feelings, to explore what they're going through, and then understand how they're interacting with each other, how we build teamwork, how we build self-control, how we build all these things which are really critical, which used to be referred to as soft skills, but now we think of as 21st century skills. Music is sort of front and center for that, because children are able to relate to music and engage with music even before they're able to adequately articulate what they're thinking.
I think it has a great impact. Of course, I mean, we've heard for many, many years things from parents, kind of anecdotally, where they say, okay, fine, my kid was very hyper, but then they started music classes, and then now I find that it's a time where he or she is really calm, and it helps for the rest of the day. Those kind of things. We've also kind of seen anecdotally in schools, where we've had some cases where children who are kind of on the autistic spectrum, uh, they have responded amazingly to music. We've had instances where, our SaPa teacher is kind of teaching the entire class, and this one child was he was our teacher was kind of told by the school as well that this child will kind of let him be. He'll do things his way, and just let him be in the class, and all of that. So apparently the entire year he was just sitting in one uh, a corner of the room, and at the end of the year, when we normally have our assessments and everything, our um, the kids started singing, and then this child just came to our teacher and then tapped his shoulder and then sang all the songs. And it's amazing. Even sometimes when we've gone for workshops, we've seen situations where some kid would just come. I remember one kid just came and tapped me and asked me if he could hold the violin. So then I was showing him a little bit and everything, and he was plucking the strings. And then I found out later that this was a child that apparently never engages with anybody, and he's always kind of in his own space. So it's not something that we have kind of done scientific research on, but we have anecdotally seen that it can be a very very powerful tool for all children.
Yeah, whether it's a neurotypical child or a child on a spectrum, we see that kind of musical interventions are so powerful at a very young age.
So I think when we're looking at different age groups for children, the methodology needs to be very different. So I think when we're looking at very young children, the idea is to create that exposure and love for the art form first, because I think that is the most important thing. If as a student of anything, I mean, even for us, the moment you fall in love with that art form, then you don't have to tell the student to go practice. You don't have to tell the student you need to work on this is not okay, that is not okay. So I think the first thing is to kind of build that love for the art form and build a rapport with the teacher. uh, and then I think, especially when they're very young, it's important to give children a bit of time and not expect too much too quickly. So some children sometimes, with anything, you see within the second class itself there's this spark, and you're like, okay, wow, this kid is very talented in this. Some kids, that spark comes a little later, and it doesn't mean that it's not there. So we found a lot of instances in SaPa as well, where children may be uh, uh, quote unquote struggling in the first year or two, but then something hits them, or all the work that they've put in, and then they just take off in year three. So and I think that happens because the child is interested, because the child is passionate, because they're still putting in that effort. So I think it's very important to make sure that passion is kind of in the child, and then to give them a little bit of time and freedom to find their own way as well.
So there's a lot of research. Again, Ambi and I have sort of done our PhDs, and mine is sort of centered around music education and how music benefits young children. And really, from a very very young age, from the time they're pre-literate, music is beneficial, right? It helps the way that the brain develops, it helps the left and right brain coordination, it helps with literacy, it helps with numeracy. There's so many studies that have happened around the world that show that when you learn to sing in different languages, it helps with neuroplasticity of the brain. It helps if you want to learn more languages later on. They've done studies with kids to show that if you're exposed to different styles of music, then that's a very beneficial thing, how you react to that. Children learn how to read better sometimes because the fluency comes in when they're listening to music. There are connections between music and mathematics, there are questions between music and science. And even if you're looking at kind of how to make education more interdisciplinary, there has been a very strong argument for quite a few years now about this idea of STEAM, right? Science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. Because when you integrate real life examples and when you make things more exciting for children, they learn better than when they just learn by rote. So for example, if we're trying to teach children concepts in physics, an interesting way to do that is by using a string quartet, right? You've got the violin, the viola, the cello, the bass, and then you're seeing that all of these instruments look similar, but what is the difference when we're looking at resonance and frequencies and string length and pitch, and there's so many exciting ways. We do konakol and mathematics as well, which is sort of like the recitation of percussive symbols, and then you can use that to teach mathematical concepts like uh, LCM and things like that.
And also, what we find is music can be a very good starting point to kind of have different discussions, different topics. Like for example, sometimes these sessions can be a very good starting point to discuss how music can be used for social change. It can be used to kind of also teach people about the culture of different areas, a lot of these things. So it can be a great tool by itself, and it can also be a tool to help other things.
There's one thing that I want to add here. I think it's really important to acknowledge that there's no such thing as good music or the right music, right? I mean, there are parameters which you would use to define uh, qualitatively whether a piece of music is in pitch or in rhythm, and all of those things. And when you're teaching music, you want to make sure that students understand the rubric and they're doing a good job. But when you're listening to a piece of music, I don't think it makes sense to say, okay, this is good music and this is bad music, and this is music that you should listen to and this is music that you shouldn't listen to. I think it's really important to find music that resonates with you. And as far as possible, kind of for children, create a broad base of music that they have access to, because then you don't know what they will be passionate about or what will be exciting to them. And the more music that you listen to, the more open-minded that you're going to be. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And again, when we see children, there is sometimes this misconception that children like children's music. And what is children's music? Children's music is nursery rhymes. And I don't think that's true, because children, in our experience working with tens of thousands of children respond well to any sort of music that they're exposed to. And I think that also is very critical to social emotional learning. Children can listen peacefully to soft music, they can listen to classical music, they can listen to up-tempo music, they can listen to African music, they can listen to so many different styles of music and understand and absorb that. So it's really important to kind of create a distinction between this idea of children's music and music that can be accessible by children.
If they like something, they will obviously respond to it better. uh, I think even at SaPa, what we try to do is, I mean, we have kind of the luxury of having all these different disciplines, so a child can really come and figure out what they are interested in. So sometimes the parent may put a child in, say, a tabla class, but then you after a while you see he keeps looking at the violin class, or he keeps looking at what's happening in the guitar class or whatever. So I think sometimes uh, in the beginning it's important to make sure that they are exposed to all these different things, and then once they pick something, it's important to stick with it, I think, because then, I mean, if you kind of stick with it, you especially with an instrument, I think, because
It
initially,
takes time to grow.
yeah, initially with an instrument, sometimes it may take a little bit of time to build a little bit of skill, uh, but I think it's important to find give them that exposure initially.
And also, what we've seen at SaPa, because this is something that excites both of us, so we try to give it to all our kids, as well as this idea of interdisciplinarity. So we see kids who come in with one thing, and then we realize that they are passionate about many things. So rather than just making them do one thing, they are all, sort of building different skill sets that connect in unique ways for themselves. So you can have a child who kind of starts off as a violinist and is building a lot of skill as, sort of a Carnatic classic violinist, but then decides to classical violinist, and then decides to sort of also look at playing the Western piano, and then how those two fit together, and then say maybe singing. Or so I think it's important, as Ambi says, to experience different things and focus and make sure that you're doing a good job, but also be kind of open minded enough to build an interdisciplinary skill set, so you're unique in that sense. Are you asking about vocal versus instrumental because he's an instrumentalist and I'm a vocalist? Because in that case, I mean, we're going to be divided by it. But honestly, but honestly, I think when children are really, really young, there is an argument to be made for singing, because singing is sort of natural. And we have a lot of people who come in at like 2 or 3 and start with singing, and then transition into instruments, either stop singing and play the instrument or continue doing both singing and instrumental music. But when they come in at an older age, say 6 or something like that, I don't think that there's a one size fits all solution. It's really what is exciting for the child, what they're passionate about, and what they want to spend their time on. Both have
Absolutely.
tremendous benefits.
So actually, we start our parent toddler program starts at 18 months, and then but we teach even we teach adults as well. I know we talk a lot about
Only about
teaching
kids.
young kids because that's our has been our passion. But we also, of course, teach people of all ages, and of course, I think you can learn at any age, and but I think. Uh, it all depends on what you want to kind of what is your goal out of learning music. Is your goal um, to be the best musician in the world and achieve 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or is your goal for music to be a part of your life and to improve every day and to really have that time where you're enjoying what you're doing, and if that is what you want out of music, you can certainly learn at any age. You can start learning music when you're 60 as well. There's absolutely no issue with that. So I think it also depends on uh, how we view learning music and what we want to achieve out of that. So there are a couple of things here. I think one, obviously having kind of things that are offline as hobbies do help reducing screen time, as long as you can keep the child engaged. Uh, but at the same time, like you said, gadgets are obviously here to stay, and uh, there are going to be situations where the kids are going to be in front of gadgets for a number of hours. So it is also a question of how can you make that time productive. So if they're going to be in front of an iPad, if they're going to be in front of a computer, if they're going to be in front of a TV, can we make that time a little more productive so that they are learning something, they are enriching their lives, they are improving uh, their mental health, whatever you want to take out of it. Um, can we do that for our kids instead of saying, okay, no, now now don't look at a screen, go sit in a corner, and then they're not being engaged. So I think it's a bit of both. We want to make sure that they're not on gadgets all the time, but when they are on gadgets, they should be kind of meaningfully engaged.
So, I mean, our advice to parents who are concerned about their children and development and the best way to kind of go about parenting or making music a meaningful part of a child's life is to just kind of find small ways to anchor music into your day, whether it is, starting the day with a piece of music, or saying that, okay, this is the music that we listen to when we brush our teeth, or this is tummy time music, or this is playtime music, or this is before bed music. I think that's a really good way to initially introduce music into a child's life. And And don't worry about kind of making sure they're listening to the best music. Try to be open, try to expose them to different things, music that you like, sometimes music that you don't like also is a good thing for children to listen to. And what we've been trying to do through SaPa is create different ways for children to engage in music, whether it's SaPa in schools where children learn as a community, there's music appreciation, there's children, all children get access to music, or through our centers where they can come in person or online and learn in smaller groups, whether it's a parent toddler program or something like music and movement, or emphasis on a particular style of music, the voice, or an instrumental style of music. And now we've got these asynchronous courses on our learning management system also, where we've really worked with legends, and that's something that we're finding parents and even grandparents are enjoying. So you can listen to what legend like Kavita Krishnamurti or Pankaj Udas ji or Usha Uddup ji kind of have to say about music and their role with it and how they do what they do. So I think it's just about creating an atmosphere where you're open to different styles of music all the time and you're making music a meaningful part of your life.